Hello there. The other week I was watching a playoff football game and then the game got really lopsided, so I stopped watching it. And there are a lot of TVs in our lounge, so I found my eye drifting to some of the other TVs, and one of the TVs had Mets Classics on. It's a thing that the Mets cable network does. This game was from 2019. It was Mets versus Marlins. I'm bringing it up because of this guy, Curtis Granderson, in a Miami Marlins uniform. This is his Celtic Shack meme. And I was like, I forgot that Granderson was a Miami Marlin, and he's like one of my favorite players. So naturally, as we all do, I went to his baseball reference page for a little blast from the past, and Curtis Granderson was really good. He's also on the Hall of Fame ballot this year, and he just fell off because he only got 3 votes. But I thought, well, you know what? Let me just talk about Curtis Granderson for 15 minutes. I haven't done a video in a while where I kind of just like pick out a guy that I really like and say, hey, here's what we're talking about for 15 minutes. Sit down, learn. I would never talk to you guys like that. Don't take that personally. So yeah, Curtis Granderson's not a Hall of Famer. He might not even be elite, but he's one of my favorite baseball players ever. And today we're going to talk about him. And I kind of feel like sitting down, so I'm just going to go sit down. I want to begin our video with a pretty illuminating quote into the type of person that Curtis Granderson is. In a Sports Illustrated piece from 2007, Granderson's college coach said that he'd be, quote, lying to you if he said he thought he was going to be a major league player. What set Granderson aside from the rest was that he was an incredibly hard worker who just kept getting better and better with each season that passed. A decade down the line from this quote, Granderson himself even remarked that he didn't think he was long for the big leagues either, saying that, I said to myself, I'll probably play 2 to 3 years in the minor leagues and I'll probably be released and go put my college degree to work. Then teams kept letting me come back. Granderson grew up in an education-first family with both of his parents being teachers and his sister being a teacher, and he valued getting a college degree greatly. In his final season of collegiate ball, he helped the University of Illinois Chicago win its first ever conference title. Even before reaching the major leagues, Granderson would return home to Chicago to speak at local public schools, trying to set both an athletic and academic example for the city's youth. In Granderson's first full season as a big leaguer in 2006, his Detroit Tigers shocked many by riding a wildcard berth all the way to the World Series. In his proper rookie campaign, Granderson clubbed 19 home runs and played superb defense in center field. In fact, starting in 2004 when he got his initial call-up, he began his career with an 151-game streak without an error, the longest such streak since Dave Roberts kicked off his career with a longer number in 1999. The lights were certainly not too bright for the rookie either. After a solid campaign at age 25, Curtis Granderson exploded in his first postseason run, hitting over 300 with 3 home runs between the Division Series and Championship Series. Facing off against an unlikely opponent in the 83-win St. Louis Cardinals in the Fall Classic, our protagonist would have the first memorable moment of his long career. It just wasn't exactly memorable for a good reason. With the Tigers down a game in the series, Game 4 proved to be a pivotal matchup. The Tigers were nursing a 1-run lead in the 7th inning of the game when David Eckstein lifted a routine fly ball off Fernando Rodney. Curtis Granderson tracked it well like he always did. He had a beat on it, and then he slipped on the slick, wet grass out in center field. What should have been an out became a double. What followed this miscue was a total meltdown. Fernando Rodney muffed a throw on the very next at-bat on a bunt, an error that tied the game. 3 batters later, Preston Wilson delivered the lead for the St. Louis Cardinals with an RBI single. Despite leading 3-0 in this game, the Tigers fell by a final score of 5-4, dropping this game and the next game to eventually lose the World Series. Okay, I'm back here for a second because one, I feel like I'm giving a presentation, so I wanted to point at my whiteboard, even though this is technically a green board. But imagine you're watching this game at home. Baseball is kind of in a weird spot post steroids, and they're not marketing the game very well. So in all likelihood, if you're not a Tigers fan or even an AL Central fan, this is the first time you're seeing this young center fielder, and this is the image you have imprinted of him. When I think of massive mistakes and massive spotlights when it comes to baseball, I think of names like Trent Grisham, and I think he's a good example of how it's hard to escape that shadow over a long career. Even though he's played for multiple teams since then, the defining memory of Trent Grisham for a lot of people still is that error in the 2019 wildcard game. This, however, did not happen to Curtis Granderson. Curtis Granderson didn't know it yet, but he'd have some World Series redemption on the horizon later down the line. We'll get to that in a little bit. Granderson responded to this nightmarish lowlight by having the best season of his career the following year. At age 26, Granderson put up a 7-WAR season. He led the league with 23 triples, he hit over 300 on the year, and he finished 10th in American League MVP voting. He joined Willie Mays, Jimmy Rollins, and Frank Wildfire Schultz as one of just 4 MLB players ever to hit for 20 doubles, 20 triples, 20 20 home runs and also steal 20 bases in a single season. Granderson, while already being a defensively gifted center fielder, had found his power stroke in his sophomore season. Since 2000, he's one of just 7 everyday center fielders to put up a 7-WAR season while also hitting for an OPS above 900, joined by the likes of Mike Trout and Carlos Beltran among other great players. This 2007 performance earned Granderson a well-deserved extension as he signed a 5-year deal worth a bargain at just $30.2 million. Granderson also earned endorsement deals with various blue-chip brands through this extension, but he asked that instead of getting a retainer, that each brand donates that money in equipment to inner-city youth baseball teams across the Midwest. Granderson continued to put up elite numbers in the ensuing years, with Carlos Beltran being the only center fielder more valuable than Granderson by WAR in this window from 2007 to 2009.
Who's your Tiger? Is it the lefty leadoff man with the great eye at the plate? The clutch hitter with power to spare? The center field sensation whose glove is second to none? Then your Tiger is Curtis Granderson. Who's your Tiger?
His value persisted off the field as well. Even when the Detroit Tigers failed to reach the postseason in 2007 and 2008, Curtis Granderson was still popping up on TV screens across the nation when TBS brought him on board their commentary team alongside Dennis Eckersley, Cal Ripken Jr., and John Smoltz. Despite his glowing resume and affordable contract as a 29-year-old center fielder, the Detroit Tigers began shopping Curtis Granderson on the trade market following 2009. The winning bid ended up becoming one of the most famous 3-team trades in MLB history. In the end, Detroit ended up with future Hall of Famer Max Scherzer, the Arizona Diamondbacks nabbed a pair of starting pitchers, and heading to the New York Yankees was none other than Curtis Granderson. Just a month after climbing the mountain and hoisting a World Series trophy, the Bronx Bombers replaced Johnny Damon with a very talented new player. Curtis Granderson kicked off his Yankees era with a bang, homering in his first at-bat in pinstripes against none other than their longtime rival, the Boston Red Sox. While Granderson was still a great player in his first season in a new uniform, a dip in his offensive production had the center fielder returning to the drawing board looking for new ideas. A big collaborator in this effort was hitting coach Kevin Long, who's developed a reputation for being on the coaching staff of several successful MLB teams. For his career to that point, Granderson had never put up above league average stats against southpaws, and going into his age 30 season, he was looking to take a step forward offensively. Kevin Long was able to identify 2 main flaws with Curtis Granderson's approach, specifically against left-handed pitching. Long found that Granderson was set up too far away from home plate and that his body tended to lean over the plate as he swung, affecting the balance of his swing. For as talented as Curtis Granderson was, he also matched that in adaptability. He hammered out these changes, and in 2011, he ended up with the best offensive season of his 16-year career. Granderson led the American League in both runs scored and runs batted in, belting a then career-high 41 home runs with a .916 OPS. In 2010, Granderson had a .647 OPS against left-handed pitching, and in 2011, that skyrocketed nearly 300 points in the same split, and was actually higher than his mark against right-handed pitching. Since the beginning of the expansion era over 60 years ago, there have only been 13 primary center fielders to homer 40 times or more in a single season, and Granderson appears on this list twice. His efforts landed him in the top 5 of American League MVP voting for the first and only time of his career. However, at the end of 2 of his most prolific power-hitting campaigns, Granderson's new team would be conquered by his original team, with the Yankees losing to the Tigers in the playoffs in both 2011 and 2012. In their American League Championship Series loss in the latter year, Curtis went 0 for 11 with 7 strikeouts in a deflating performance. This was perhaps an omen for Granderson's troublesome season that followed. A hit by pitch from Jay Happ left Granderson with a right forearm fracture in spring training before the 2013 season. Just a couple weeks after returning, Granderson was hit by a pitch again and suffered a broken finger, shelving him for another 3 months. In an ever-important contract year, Granderson posted career-worst numbers offensively and played in just 61 games, a career low. Naturally, this drastically altered Curtis Granderson's free agent market, but in a weird way, I'm almost glad that he got hit by those pitches. Not that I want Curtis Granderson to get hurt, I'm not that kind of guy. It's just I don't think that the cheap spending Wilpon family would have spent money on Curtis Granderson had he not had the worst year of his career. That's what being a Mets fan used to be like. A month into the offseason, Curtis Granderson inked a 4-year contract with the crosstown rival New York Mets, their first serious free agent pursuit since the disaster that was the Jason Bay contract. Jason Bay is kind of like Beetlejuice for Mets fans. If you say his name too much, he's going to pop up in your home and you're going to get really scared, and then he's just going to offer you like a bottle of maple syrup. That was a Canadian joke. Was it good? Granderson memorably decreed in his press conference that, quote,
"A lot of the people I've met in New York have always said that true New Yorkers are Mets fans, so I'm excited to get a chance to see them all out there."
A quote that surely burned his Yankees bridge while also instantly endearing him to his new fan base. However, Curtis Granderson's Mets tenure did not come without its bumps in the road. Using Granderson primarily as a cleanup hitter in his first year, the right fielder finished his first month as a Met with an OPS below 500. Granderson ebbed and flowed for the entire 2014 campaign, finishing with mostly underwhelming numbers. But with a horde of young pitching talent coming through the Mets pipeline, 2015 looked to be a brighter year for all involved. It certainly helped that the Mets were able to nab hitting coach Kevin Long for their staff, reuniting him with Curtis Granderson. After permanently moving to the leadoff spot for the first time since his days in Detroit, Granderson found his footing once again with an absolutely stellar season in 2015, one of the best of his career. He eclipsed the 5 WAR mark in a single season for the third and final time of his career, raising his OPS over 100 points from his down year prior. He led all of baseball with 7 leadoff home runs that season as well. He led the team in games played, hits, walks, stolen bases, and total bases, helping the club claim their first division title in nearly a decade. Speaking as a guy that watched every game of it, in a season full of emotional whiplash, untimely injuries, and plenty of new faces on the roster, Curtis Granderson was a beacon of consistency on the 2015 New York Mets, one that was very needed. These Mets ended up clawing their way to an unlikely National League pennant, putting Curtis Granderson in the World Series for the first time since 2006. In a bout of World Series redemption, Granderson was easily the most productive Mets player in a mostly lopsided series. He clubbed 3 home runs in the 5 games, all of them being go-ahead home runs in pivotal moments. However, Curtis Granderson seemed to be the only Met that showed up, as the team lost the World Series in 5 games, but he did everything in his power to will his team to a victory. Though this would certainly be the peak of the Mets in the 2010s, Granderson stayed consistent and productive throughout the remainder of his contract. The following season, Granderson reached the 30-homer plateau for the first time since 2012, back in his Yankees days. He also set the franchise record this season with his 17th leadoff home run in this window. Overall, Granderson's numbers were definitely better as a Yankee, but in both of his 4-year stints with either New York team, he was a key piece of the everyday lineup and worth every penny of the contract that he signed. Beyond his time in the Big Apple, Granderson became something of a mercenary for hire, playing for 5 different teams in a 3-year stint to close out his impressive career. Granderson almost capped off his postseason resume with some heroics. He found himself on the 2018 Milwaukee Brewers. In that NLCS matchup, Granderson had a limited role, getting just 3 plate appearances overall. But in 2 of those plate appearances, he cranked fly balls in the late innings of close games, both of which fell just a few feet shy of the fence. Had these balls gotten out, both of these would have been go-ahead home runs of games that the Brewers ended up losing, and could have changed the fate of that team entirely. I'm not even a Brewers fan, and I still find myself imagining, what if? And if you are a Brewers fan and you're just watching this video and you unknowingly just caught a stray, I am so sorry. And that leads us to Granderson's final year in 2019 with none other than the Miami Marlins, the very image that inspired me to make this video in the first place. That Marlins team was atrocious, and it was clear that Curtis Granderson's best days were behind him as a big leaguer at age 38. Part of me used to wish that he just retired on a high note, but who knows? Maybe without this Mets Classics experience, this video I had a lot of fun making never gets made. Curtis Granderson hit the Hall of Fame ballot this year as well, and though we've learned in the past few days that he is not going to be on the ballot beyond this year, it just gives us an opportunity to reflect on his underrated career one last time. He's one of just 10 outfielders since the turn of the century with a double-digit amount of 20 homer seasons. He's one of just 8 outfielders with over 300 home runs and over 150 stolen bases since the year 2000 as well. 47 of his career home runs were leadoff home runs, the 7th highest total of any player in MLB history. But beyond his talents and consistency, he's an extremely involved member of the MLB Players Association. He's a former ambassador of the league. He's given back tenfold to every community that he's played for. The guy is just a good dude, and I was very happy to talk about him for 15 minutes straight today. So yeah, he may not be Cooperstown bound, but Curtis Granderson is one of my favorite players ever, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that opinion. If you enjoyed today's video, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the Jolly Olive channel. I'd really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time.